There's podcasts I might listen to, and most of the podcasts are relevant, but there's one gem in the 1 hour podcast, and you've just got to listen to the whole podcast and you get that one gem. And now
Tell you what, today's breakfast is going to be a sweet one. All you're going to need, some flour, some baking powder, some bananas, some blueberries, bit of coconut oil, some cinnamon and some honey. Alright, let's begin. Today's recipe was inspired by Be Raw, Eat Raw. If you're interested in exotic fruits, go give them a follow on social media. Alright. So first up, you're going to need your flour. Now I use wheat flour today, but if you don't have wheat flour, don't worry, you can use normal self-raising flour. If you want to be even more particular, you could also use oatmeal flour, because as we know with our time with Rick, oats contain a great source of carbohydrates for energy, fiber, protein and nutritious fats. Once you have your wheat flour, you're going to need your coconut flour. Like oat flour, coconut flour is just as good of a source of protein, fiber and other needed minerals like iron and potassium. It's also gluten-free, so great for those people on gluten-free diets. Next up, add your coconut milk. A big positive of coconut milk is the fact that it can strengthen the immune system. Not getting ill is likely to increase one's chances of shining on a football pitch, winning that race or getting that coaching role. If you're able to be in grafting when your opposition is off recovering from the flu, you could gain an advantage, right? In that case, maybe adding coconut milk to your diet isn't too bad of a shout. Alright, so we've got flour, milk. Next, let's add some cinnamon. Including cinnamon in your diet actually reduces your blood pressure and lowers your risk of type 2 diabetes. I'm not saying go overboard with the cinnamon, but adding some to your diet can definitely have positive effects. Next, let's add our baking soda. I got baking soda. Imagine, when I was doing my research on this episode, I found out that baking powder can clear acid from your muscle cells. This means there's potential it could contribute to you being able to train harder, faster, and for longer. I said could. Don't start abusing the baking powder, people. Okay, next, mix all these ingredients into a bowl. Then, we're going to add our bananas. Bananas contain positive nutrients, vitamins, minerals, fiber, proteins, the lot. Weaving them into your breakfast somehow is definitely always a positive. They are quick to digest and have also been associated with helping reduce muscle cramps and soreness. Like oats, bananas is definitely a boss up for breakfast, top ranked ingredient. So once you've added the bananas and softly blended it all together, add the blueberries. But don't blend the blueberries. Blueberries are a lovely ingredient, especially for athletes. They digest slowly, so provide a great, steady release of energy. They're also very good at assisting the acceleration of muscle recovery and inflammation. This means they could be a great post-exercise ingredient too. Okay, so time to fry. Heat a non-stick frying pan over a medium heat. Add your coconut oil. Now simply add spoonfuls of the batter to the pan and leave it until it's nice and golden brown. I'm not gonna lie, this was my first attempt ever making this kind of pancake. I got a lot to improve on in terms of presentation, but I just know these pancakes are gonna taste. Serve your pancake with fresh fruit of your choice and drizzle it with honey. Of course, if you want to add maple syrup or any other topping, be my guest. And there you have it. made from our champion oats, bananas, coconut flour, coconut milk, and blueberries. Today's breakfast is all plant-based. Food fresh from the earth to give you the freshest kickstart to your day. Alright, time to boss up. Let's go have some breakfast with today's special guest. Yes, people, Coach Nathaniel here, aka Mr. Escalate, and today we have a very special guest, my longtime friend, Mr. Man like Andre Bennett himself. Andre Bennett. So, yeah, obviously. So I wanted to bring Andre. He's in England. He's in England. So I was like, I'm clearing my calendar. I have to get this guy on this show.
Rare occurrence.
Rare. This guy's a rare Pokemon. I was like, no, I need him on the show. So, yeah, man. Andre, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for coming. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, what do you think about the pancakes?
The protein pancake.
Yeah,
one is already gone.
Nice.
Yeah, natural, vegan as well, accommodating for me. So yeah, it's very, very nice.
Yeah, man. So it's one of them ones. I don't normally have the vegan breakfast, but I think it's tasty. Obviously, the bananas in there as well. One of my favourites for breakfast. So I think it's good. It's good to last a day.
Helping me hit my 5 a day.
Yeah, not too bad. Got little strawberries there as well for the toppings, you know. But yeah, man. So I wanted to kind of just get cracking straight away because you know the people are interested to know who's this guy. Why is he so special to Nathaniel? Like what's going on? So yeah, just I want you to kind of tell us a bit about yourself. So who are you? What do you do? And that's it actually. We'll start at that. Who are you and what do you do?
So my name's Andre. My main area of what I do is I play football, I coach football. Growing up I've always played football, tried to play at the highest level, worked on myself to every day, day in and day out to try and achieve that.
We'll talk a little bit about that.
But eventually I've gone into coaching. There's a couple of things that happened in my career that forced me into that journey, but eventually it was a blessing in disguise. So now I'm out in Australia coaching and trying to coach at the highest level I can, produce the best players that I can, and it's just a lifelong study, just trying to understand what makes world-class players and help players get to that level, because I believe with the right mindset, the right tools, the correct awareness, a lot of players can get there, and it's not as hard as people think.
I love that. That's nice, man. Proper nice. So, tell us a bit about your path. So, why? I want to go more into the Australia part in a bit. I just want to just take a few steps back because you said you was playing, and you talked a bit about your training, and now I'm going to mention about that as well because I have some things to say about that process in terms of just the switch of when you began to really start putting 160% into your training. But why? What happened? What was your reasons for going to Australia? Like why? What was happening around that time, and why did you decide Australia?
So yeah, it was probably I went to Australia in 2018 Jan, and at that time I was in a place in my life where I had been committed fully to football, but the progress at the level that I was playing at, it wasn't there. And I was looking around me, and in London, there's a lot of. I'm one of many in London. A lot of players at that time, at my age, doing a similar thing, trying to make it. But we're all playing at the same level, and it was like we was all competing against each other. And my friend Daniel Baker, who was currently out in Australia, he was working in football over there, and he was playing over there, and he was messaging me, telling me how great it is, and he knew how serious I was about football, and he's the one who recommended that I come out there and play and coach, and I could play at a good standard of football, coach to make up the rest of my wage, and live life. Where when I was here in England, it would be play, but then it would be work to fund my dream. And the work inside of it, even though it was based in football, was very grassroots level. So almost sometimes it could be like after school clubs and not necessarily coaching players that want to achieve things in the game. So that was very much work at that time, and going out to Australia, it was a great opportunity to change the scenery, change the people I was around, and now go from being one of many to a very unique person in that environment.
That's crazy. So, just before I ask my next question, like, originally when you first went to Australia 2018, you said, how long did you plan to go for?
So, to be honest, I only planned to go for a year, just to get some experience and just see what it would be like across the world, football-wise. Because at that time, from what I remember, a lot of players would flirt with trying to go abroad and try their football career abroad, but it would never materialise, because obviously there's a lot of things that go into it when you fly away from home. But I just thought, I'm already committed to it. Whatever I do, I always try to do with a 10 out of 10 focus, 10 out of 10 effort. And I was like, you know what, let me just go and see what happens. But I never envisaged it would be as long as it has been.
That's crazy. So, obviously you went to Australia at a relatively young age. As a player as well, especially, so I feel like going as a coach can sometimes be a bit different, because you kind of, as a coach, not always, but normally you know exactly why I'm going there for a job opportunity, which probably is already there a lot of the time, not always. But I feel like as a player, it must have been quite scary.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't, especially Australia. You always hear things about what you think it might be like, or what people think it may be like from a distance. So there was some anxiety there, definitely. And I think anyone that's normal would have anxiety traveling across the whole wide world for an opportunity. But I was lucky enough to have someone there, which is important. And when you do go abroad, if you have someone already over there, it makes it so much easier. And Dan was great in accommodating me. But yeah, definitely, it was definitely scary. There was fear of fitting into the culture. There was fear of no support network out there. There was fear of financially, how am I going to cope financially? And it wasn't like I was going there and there was a team ready for me. I still had to trial. So that part, I was very confident in my footballing ability. I didn't feel like I had any trouble finding a team. But the things around it, definitely. I had never been on a flight that was longer than 5 hours before. So definitely a lot of anxiety there. But I just the dream was more important than the fears.
Do you feel like that's really important? Because obviously you said that you remember at the time, especially, there was a lot of players around your age who was flirting with the idea. So I even remember, like, at the time there's a lot of players sort of saying, I might go to Spain, I might try to go to Portugal, might. But you said the dream was bigger than the fears. Do you feel like in order for you to go and be successful in another country, that has to be the case, or is there a way that it sort of can balance another way?
I think it's not black and white. I think there's a bit of both. You can have balance, because with balance comes a plan B. For example, you might be going over there, but you might have an idea that it might not work, and you might have a backup plan, backup resources, backup career, a different route, for example. Where I was just 100% focused, gun-ho, straight to the target, 100% conviction. And with when you behave like that, and you act like that, what comes with it is your utmost best effort. When you have your utmost best effort, what happens is you learn. You're always constantly learning. You always are aware of where you are at. Because if you hold back, if you have balance, you don't know where you're fully at. Do you understand? But if you fully go for something with 100% effort, and no remorse, and you fail, you know where you're at, and then you can improve. You have a clear idea of where you're at, and you can say, okay, I had A, B, and C, but I didn't have D. Now I need to work on D, and then you recuperate. You look at it again. You improve. Now you go back with A, B, C, and D.
Okay. So would you say when you went, you had a plan in terms of you knew why you was going. I'm going to try and secure a team. As you said, you was confident in your ability, so you knew you would get a team. It's probably just not you wasn't sure what level maybe or what team, I guess. But would you say that was your only plan and you had zero plan B, or did you have a, if this doesn't work, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, there was no plan B. There was always going to be playing and then coaching on the side, and that's the dream that Dan sold. And he also said that the level didn't necessarily matter. Well, obviously we want to play the highest level we can, right? But the level, if I was good enough as I said I am, and what I believed I was, then it didn't necessarily matter about the level, because the way they showcase their game out there, you'll be quickly picked up. And where I went to is Brisbane. It's a city, but everybody kind of knows everybody in the football scene.
Okay.
And if you're doing well, you'll be
noticed.
Yeah, you'll be noticed very quickly.
Okay, that's interesting. I asked mainly because just for young players and anyone sort of thinking, I might want to go, not necessarily Australia, but somewhere else. I just wanted someone's insight who's done it, who's been and done it, whether it's okay to have doubts of what if this doesn't happen, or can you only go with the mindset of this is my plan A. So I feel like that's quite an insightful point of view. What I say, just going back to kind of what you were saying about that time period, and you was confident in your ability, because obviously I've known you for a long time. So around what age did you decide I want to be a footballer?
So the day was, it was quite late in comparison. Obviously I loved football growing up, but I had this big thing about me where I wanted to, it wasn't necessarily football, I just wanted to do something in my life where if I put 100% effort, I believe I could make it in whatever I did. And I think that's possible for everybody, but it's kind of changed now as I've grown up. It's 100% effort, but with knowledge now. And I just had that inherent belief that it wasn't impossible to achieve what you wanted to if you put that type of effort in. And I wanted to apply that to something, and the most appealing thing for me at that time was football. And I remember watching the England v Germany game in the 2010 World Cup, and we lost to Germany. That was when Frank Lampard
hit the line. I remember that,
and then it went over the line. But and I was devastated. Like, I was at that age where, like, it nearly put tears to my eyes. Like, you had these. You thought England was gonna win, and you was like, there's no way, and then your dreams just get shattered. Like, I was at that age when Man United get knocked out Champions League, or your country gets knocked out, you're upset. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna change this. That was my view. I think I was 16 at the time, or 15 or 16, and then I was like, you know what? I want to change that. And the place that I'm in now, when I'm 16, I played one organised season of football, and I was like, you know what? If I train every day, I can get there. And the target was this year actually that I gave myself a 10-year plan to be playing in the World Cup or playing professional in 2022. So it might have been a 2012 World Cup, 2010 tournament, I can't remember what's on my head. It was one of them. But that was my target. And then I said, if I did something every day towards that, there's no way that I can't achieve that. Do you understand? That was my mindset back then. And that's when I really started.
Man, that's crazy. Because like, you was one of the first people, just even you saying about your mindset, you was one of the first people I knew, because I think at the time I was still a teen, so I hadn't actually learned about these things, but to apply So my question to you is, my first question to you is, do you still agree with that 10,000 hour rule.
So I believe it to a certain extent, and I've put a lot of, I don't know if it's 10,000 hours, it might be more, it might be less, but I definitely believe in it, but it's with knowledge, it's with applied knowledge, it's with wisdom, because there's a lot of hours when I was 16 or 17, 18, I was just pushing as hard as I can, but it's against the wall. Okay. Do you understand? So it's not just about effort, it's about effort with knowledge. Okay. And looking back, if I seeked more knowledge and about what I was trying to do, and obviously when you're young, you're just doing what you think is best. But it's about the knowledge, working hard or spending time to get knowledge, and that might be going to Australia, that might be going reading up, or that might be watching documentaries, that might be watching professional football, or watching players in your position, or watching training sessions, whatever it is. Spend time researching how, and then apply. But I was just trying to apply from what I thought, from where I was a limited base of knowledge at that age.
No, I understand. I think you kind of answered my second question I was going to say, because I was going to say, if not, sort of, what would you do differently? So just coming to the knowledge spot, because I'm aware that I'll get a lot of young people watching this who might be in a place where they are willing to try as hard as they can to chase their dreams, and they're willing to put in the hours, but they're not sure where to start. So, for example, I saw the drastic improvement in your game during that time when you was putting in the hours, but then, as you said, you was hitting the ceiling in the sense of you're improving, but I want to push to the next step. But how? Where's the how? And you're hungry for that knowledge, but you might have not necessarily had the coaches around you. You might have not necessarily knew how to access the knowledge. So for young players who are hungry like that, and you're saying read the books, do this, do that, I'm aware that as a young person, it sounds as black and white as just go read the book, go research. Like, we'll do that all the time, but just thinking of as a younger player, how would you recommend somebody maybe approach gaining knowledge?
Yeah, I was that younger player. I was that guy that was willing to do anything. And if I had knowledge, if I had a script, and it was like to go pro, we have to do A, B, C, and D, then I would have done what it takes to achieve that. Do you understand? So to go about doing that is, first it comes from within. You have to have the hunger and humility. And if you don't have the hunger, if you don't have the humility, you're not going to be put in places or find yourself in places to get answers. Do you understand? I always see it from a long-term development. There's podcasts I might listen to, and most of the podcasters are relevant, but there's one gem in the 1 hour podcast, and you've just got to listen to the whole podcast and you get that one gem. And now I've listened to podcasts where it was irrelevant, got 1 or 2 gems from the hour, but now it's changed the way I coach, changed the way I play. Do you understand? So you've got to be hungry, and you've got to be humble as well, because there's a lot of times where you might come across things that might seem irrelevant to you, but you can learn from anything. You can learn from a kid playing football in the park. If you change your perspective, if you walk around thinking you know it all, then your arrogance is is going to be your weakness, because you're not open to seeing, the way he's kicked that ball, I don't have that in my locker. Yeah. Do you understand? And it doesn't matter who you're watching, someone less experienced, more experienced, same experience. You've got to be hungry and humble. The other thing is, we're living in a generation where success is in front of our eyes every single day. Yeah. There's one thing that helped my game the most was, I used to love Xavi, who used to play for Barcelona. Used to love Paul Scholes as well. And I would literally get their games, slow it down in slow-mo, and watch every move. So I'm watching the whole game, I'm not watching the ball, I'm watching Xavi. Yeah. And in slow-mo. And it's like, that's hungry. You got to be hungry, patient to watch that. And when I did that, it built my understanding of the game, because when you watch those players, you see how they're thinking, you see how they're behaving, you see how many times they're scanning, you see when they scan, you see the pass that they saw 10 seconds before he got the ball.
Yeah.
And you realise why he took that first touch. So that really built my understanding, and documenting is a big thing for me. Like, if you document your progress as a player, your progress as a person, your progress of what you're learning, you always know where you are. And if you know where you are, you can get to the next step. But as a young man, as a young lady, when you're driving towards your purpose, if you don't know where you are, you don't know how to get to the next step.
Okay, no, I hear you. I'm gonna kind of break down the points, because I feel like you did say some really good gems. So you said hunger. You said they gotta be seeking. They gotta be willing to seek what, and have an open mind to things, to learning, not be arrogant in a sense. And then you also spoke about the last thing which you just said just now, which has gone on my head.
Last thing was
I had a really good point I was going to mention.
watching the slow-mo.
Yeah, that's the one. So with the generation we're in now, do you feel like with this is me thinking this, but I'm also asking you, like, the way we're kind of spoon-fed highlights of videos, do you feel like that's affecting the way? Because I say it quite often to players, like, I might show them, they might be like, they might be like, coach, how can I improve? And I can see how they can improve, and they can improve, and I feel like often showing them themselves is a good way, but I feel like sometimes the reason why they're not improving is because they simply just don't watch enough football. And I personally feel like one of the reasons for this is because they might be like, I do watch football, but I feel like it might be that they watch a lot of highlights, but as you said, you're studying the game. So that I might sometimes watch Match of the Day, and then people around me be like, why are you watching it? You just watched the game earlier. Like, but I'm like, I really get excited for the analysis. So I'm like, that's my way of studying the game. So I've watched the game. Now I watched the game for leisure maybe, but now I'm studying the game, and it's a chance to kind of think about your ideas and recite them. And as you said, then document these things. Do you feel like the way social media and I don't know, just the way everything's so accessible now is affecting a young player, to push to the next level? Or
Yeah, I think it can, but it goes back to who the person is. If they're hungry and they're humble and they have no ego, obviously you do need a bit of ego. You don't need a bit of ego, but ego can help in football. But if you're hungry from within and your motivations are intrinsic, you will find a way. Do you understand? There's two ways to watch football, and you can watch it for entertainment and you can watch it to study. But a lot of people don't know you can watch it to study. They watch it or they don't know how to watch it for study. So when they watch things, it's always from an entertainment perspective. And so instead of watching away from the ball, they're watching the ball all the time. And the general camera, the zoom-in camera that they film games, it doesn't really help because you can't see the whole pitch. And it's like when you go to a stadium and you sit higher up, you can't help but look at the game tactically. As a coach, anyway.
See the formation.
But when you're closer, you look at it as an entertainment perspective. So I would say it goes back to the individual and what they want, and are they a student of the game? Because if you're not a student of the game, you're going to look at the highlights on the social media as an entertainment tool. If you're inherently a student of the game, and you want to learn, you're hungry, and you ask questions, then you'll look at it from a entertainment. So it goes back to who are you as a person, or who do you want to be? Because it doesn't matter if you haven't been doing that. It matters about what are you going to do now. Do you understand? And going forward.
No, it's very, very interesting. Now, I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna move on to sort of change it up a little bit, just because I want people to be able to reflect on what you said so far. But so far, I find that you have said some really valid points that hopefully people can use to influence and change their mindset to hopefully help them. So just going forward in your journey, so you've gone to Australia, and you've gone to play in the sense of you want to try and find a team. How did you find a team out there? Because I really want to know this question, because for anyone thinking about traveling abroad, they might have searched on Google before and seen these are the teams. But as you said, you didn't really have an idea of where the team's going to come from. So I just want to know, how did you find a team when you got to Australia?
So when I got to Australia, Dan was already working in the club. So that was helpful. And as I said earlier, that's half the battle. If you know somebody over there, that's already half the battle. And he was working in the club, and he automatically just clicked his finger, and I was on trial for that club. But being out there for 5 years now, knowing how the clubs work, they always receive emails of videos and highlights of players, and everybody wants the next best player. So young players they all in this generation now have to have footage of where they're at, and a footage that demonstrates all of their, not vague footage deep. I'm not talking about long. I'm talking about footage that shows their strengths in a number of ways. So if they were looking to go abroad, it's all about hitting up the clubs, emailing them, and just explaining their situation, that they want to come out there, or they're going to wherever they're going. And the other route is agents.
I wanna kind of move on, just because, as I was saying, I could be here all day talking to you about just your journey and what happened next, because I'm very, very interested, and I'm sure we've got a lot of people interested in that. But there's a few key things I think the people, especially those watching our viewers, would find really helpful and really interesting about you. So I'm going to move on. I know we'll come back to this side of the story another time. So you obviously gone out to Australia, you've gone to play. What's happened out there, which I think we'll come back to. In fact, you know what? We'll go there. So what happened? Let's just to kind of help round things up to our next point. What happened which kind of led you to this coaching journey you're on now?
So I had always coached. And as a player, as I said, I was all about 10 out of 10 effort and training. So there are times where there's no one to train with, and I just train myself. So I've been training myself before I went out there. I've been training myself for about a good 5 years, good 6 years. And when you train yourself, you learn. When you're thinking about drills to do by yourself, you learn how to build a player. And where I was as a player, I wasn't great at the beginning, and I developed a lot, and it was just from training myself. So I knew, say I was a 1 out of 10 player, to get to the 8, 9, 10 out of 10 player, I knew each step. So the knowledge came from developing myself, and then I would always coach to make money, but again, it was like a very, very grassroots level. And then when I went up to Australia, it was what I had to do was play and earn money, and coach and earn the rest of the money to make up the wage that I could live on out there. And I just hit the ground running with coaching. Like the kids took the players, they took to me. Roles came off, role after role. That the people that ran the club, they could see how the rapport that I built with the players, how I coached them, how quickly I developed them, how hard the teams that I was working with how hard they worked, the purpose and the drive that was now in their eyes that wasn't before, and it came quite naturally. But it was still like a side thing for me. It wasn't. I never took coaching seriously, but it was just my natural personality of being 10 out of 10 effort. That kind of showed out in my coaching, and I think that was a lot of players bought into that.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you're out in Australia now. You kind of the ground's hitting off the ground running. You're coaching as well, getting more and more coaching roles. What moment did you? So what moment did you decide? Okay, cool. I'm now this Coach Andre. Coach Andre, or what did your players call you? Yeah, I don't know. I have a different name with it. But yeah, so I'm a coach out here. I'm going to stay out here and do what you're doing now.
Okay, so I was of course kind of forced into that journey. So I tore my ACL in both knees, so I had to have surgery, and that kind of derailed. With the rehab for the ACL, it takes 1 year to 2 years to recover. So imagine having nearly 4 years out of the game. So that derailed my hopes and dreams of playing at the level that I wanted to play at the age I wanted to play at. So while I was injured and while I was coaching out there, I started doing the coaching badges, and I was just flying through them, and the course instructors were highly complimentary about it. And it was only till I coached under 18s 11-a-side team, and we ended up winning the comp, and it was such a special feeling. It was my first serious. Obviously, I had coached teams before, but the difference with this team, I could focus my energy on it because I was recovering from my ACL, and it was the first team I had from pre-season, from the start to the end of the season, and we played some amazing football. There's a lot of players that developed and played first team football and played at the highest level they could in Brisbane, and got decent moves. But it was the feeling that we all got of achieving something together, and we were at a certain point at the start, and by the end we all had grown, and that feeling of turning young men into responsible leaders was a very fulfilling feeling for me, and I thought that's a feeling that I would like to have and instill in other people in my career. So just helping players become the best version of themselves became very important to me.
Yeah, I definitely understand that feeling. It is very fulfilling, and I know how you just saying about trying to spread that just making young men into, or women into young leaders, and just trying to inspire them in terms of through what you're showing and what you're sharing in terms of your knowledge. I know that's something that you put 1,000% into. I've seen it throughout your journey, so keep doing it. You know what I'm saying? Keep it up, bro. Yeah, what I was gonna say next is from there. So you are now coaching out in Brisbane, doing quite well in terms of your coaching journey. What, in fact, even before that, what are the players like in Australia? Because I think people might want to know, and obviously we don't know where this is gonna go. So I'm not saying it in a sense of be biased or anything, but compared to the players, because you've coached in England and London, is there like a certain style of play that is clear to see in Australia?
So in Australia, what they are trying to do currently, or were trying to do, was get all teams to play 4-3-3. They wanted to develop more skillful, more creative players, proactive players, and they have done research on a lot of countries around Europe, right? And since they've implemented that model, you're starting to see now the younger players they have a more technical based game. And the good thing about Australia, for them over there, is that it's a very athletic country. So if you think about the four corners of technical, physical, social and tactical, physical, a lot of the time is already ticked because genetically some of those players over there really have a strong base. So technically is why they always lacked. But as you can see, the younger ages where the coaches are improving, the players are starting to improve. So I didn't know where they were at, to be honest. I just knew what was bad, good, amazing, excellent. Until I came back recently, or this month, to have a look at the Spurs Academy and the Crystal Palace Academy and see where they were at. And I was pleasantly surprised to see the players at the highest level in Brisbane were at a similar level to the players in the Spurs Academy, under 16 and down. But when I saw the older ages, I could see the gap widening, because the Spurs and the Cat 1 Academy, Palace Cat 1 Academy, they could have them full-time gym program, full-time training, analysis with decent coaches. So I could see the gap widening. But again, there's obviously, the difference is in London or in Europe, there's a depth of quality. So there's players after players after players after players. But in Brisbane, there are players at that level, but there's not many of them. You understand? There's if there's a age category, for example, there might be 20 players, 10 to 20 players at that level, and then but underneath that is a drop off.
Yeah, I understand.
In each age category.
Okay, that's crazy. So you kind of went into, because as soon as you're talking, I'm like, wow, that's a lot, and there's so many questions I want to ask. But as I said, I'm trying to stick to the topics at the moment, and hopefully we get you back on the show and you can share a bit more about, especially where I think I'm very interested in your time that you spent just viewing the Palace and Spurs Academy. I think that's a good conversation we might have off camera. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of just you coaching now, because you what's the highest level you coached at in Australia?
So I coached for the A-League side at there, Brisbane Roar. I was the head coach for the under-16s.
Okay, that's very good. So what was that like, even being the head coach?
So that was
at such a good level.
That was good because it was a great insight to what the 1% were. So the 1% is the 1% anywhere in the world. So if it's one, and the good thing about Brisbane, they've got a catchment area of Queensland. There's no other professional club in Queensland. So our 3 million people, they get all the best players should come to them. In theory. But it was an insight because, especially recently, seeing the level of the Spurs Academy and the Palace Academy in comparison, it was interesting. The good thing about coaching at Brisbane Roar is that they didn't have, in Brisbane as a whole, the football scene doesn't have the depth of quality. So at the highest level, so players that are really good, they get to play up to challenge them. Does that make sense? So my teams, it was under 16s, and there was only 5 off the top of my head that were actually under 16, and the rest of the team were all playing up. I had 2 under 14s, and the rest of them were under 15s. So you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I stopped then, but I was just saying, just thinking back to this sort of younger age groups, I feel like it is something that is so, it can be really effective, that what they're doing there. So just for you now, as a coach you've seen sort of that level in Australia, what is your plans going forward? Because you've now you've coached at a good level in Australia, an elite level in Australia. For yourself, what's next?
So I eventually, and that's I don't know when that might be in the next 5 years, might be in the next 10 or next 20. But I want to coach in the Premier League and I want to be a head coach.
You heard it here first, man.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. This video's gonna get replayed when it happens.
But that's the goal. And the route I'm gonna take to get there, that's it's all about gaining experience, because I believe in gaining competency first, and on a high level of competency before I achieve that. So right now I'm on the other side of the world and I'm doing the badges over there, but where it's a different country, I'm almost learning. I'm more, because the way it's set up out there, I can coach 3 teams in one season. So sometimes I'm learning times 3, where someone might be coaching 1 team here and learning only with that team. So I'm just trying to get as much experience as I can, learn about the game as much as I can, improve my coaching, improve my articulation, improve my interventions. I've already had success developing players to play at the highest level they can, so and I've done that at any level of the game I've coached. I've always been able to take players to the next level. So I know I can do it at any level. So it's not just about opportunity, gaining competency and improving myself, and then waiting for the right opportunity.
Understand. So just speaking of, I'm going to kind of combine 2 things you said. So you spoke a little bit about players, especially you said in Australia up to under 16s, when you went to view the Palace and the Spurs academies, you was pleasantly surprised that the players were at that level and younger, at sort of a similar level. But you said there was kind of a gap after, so that's from 18s going up kind of thing. In the sense of you now as a coach, do you feel like there is a way in which you as a coach, especially considering your goals, do you feel like there's a way you could bridge that gap to try and allow players to players to bridge that gap between what you see in terms of in Australia and the highest level here? And if so, what do you currently do maybe to ensure that players can reach that level?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely can help bridge that gap. You definitely need the right individuals first. That's always important, and that comes from who they are from within. And if they're the right individual inside, and I'm talking about hunger, I'm talking about humility, then they are open to receive the knowledge that they can get. The way that I like to coach, I like to analyze their game virtually, on using the VO, using the footage, and slowing it down and comparing their game, taking clips, comparing their game to the player at the highest level in their position, and showing them what they are doing right, that's similar, and what they're not doing. So it's very comparable. They can see straight away, like, oh, let me try that next game. And they've got to have, and the reason why I say it's always important about who they are, they've got to have the confidence now as a person to try that in the game. So whether it is, let's say, for example, I always try to tell players that want to play at the highest level that they need to scan as the ball is coming to them, not just, they need to generally scan the whole pitch, of course, but that last second scan as the ball travels to them. And I show them when they're not doing it and they get dispossessed, and why they get dispossessed, and because the picture changes every second. And I show them players that are doing that, and when a player presses them on their blind side out of nowhere, they can see him and then turn the other way, or shield it, or it might be a bounce pass back, whatever it is. It's a very, very fast tool to fast track players to be able to carry out actions that players at the highest level do. The only thing is the difficult thing is if you don't have the level, you can develop the player as much as you want, but if they now become the best player in their environment, the only way to challenge them is to get them playing against older players. But in England, you've got the level of there's so many Cat 1 academies that are playing against each other all the time, so they're just battling, and they're all improving.
Yeah.
So there's players out there in Australia have developed to a high level. One's represented Australia, one's represented the state, but
Very good.
when they are at the top of their tree now, it's like, what's the resistance?
Yeah.
That's when I have to start putting the boots on myself.
You don't want that. Innit? Nah, definitely. I hear you, man. Nah, so good. So like, because I know. I've seen you mentioned about sort of you like to, once they have those things that they require first within themselves, and then obviously they have that ability to be able to now go to the standard that they want to, or even if they're not, to be fair, but they have the willingness to try and get there. I've seen kind of some of your video analysis that you do, and like for me, I think video analysis, we spoke a bit about it already, just saying about VO and how important it is for to see yourself or to learn from a video and study the game. I've seen your video analysis, which I think is excellent. I know you've worked with some professional players already in terms of for them to try and push to the next level with their so I'm shivering because it's so cold. It's so cold. I'm like, oh my days, I'm put the heating on, man. But yeah, just in terms of I've seen the video analysis, and I've seen you work with professional players to get them to the next level, and I've seen how effective it has been for those players as well. Is that something you would do within a professional setting? I know it's not necessarily coaching in the Premier League, for example, but if you think about Jose Mourinho, how did he get his job? He was a translator, and then he used his wit to sort of get to where he did. So, is that something you would consider doing? So,
yeah, but potentially, like I feel like I have a character, without trying to sound big-headed, that when you hear how I coach, how I talk, you know, or you get the feeling that I can be very effective in other roles. So if that was the opportunity that came along, and I that was the only opportunity I had, then definitely I would take it. But I'm always quite stubborn about what I want to do and who I want to be, and that framework has honouring that framework has always got me to the roles that I wanted to do. So yeah, let's see.
No, I hear it. I hear you, and I think it comes back to what you said about your mentality in terms of when you was a player. It's like, I have a goal. This is where I'm going to get to, and I think you said about ego. It's important sometimes. I think it's not a negative ego. It's I feel like it's a confidence. It's a silent confidence, and obviously, to believe it or not, there's that mentality that kind of I think is very important as a sports person, as a coach, as an athlete, as a footballer. I think it's so important to have. So I just wanted to say, just even on that, if for example a player did want to kind of reach out to you because they're interested in your video analysis, how could they do that? Is there a way? Do you have a social media?
Yeah, I've got social media. It's Andre Bennett 123 on Instagram. I've got a Facebook coaching page actually, which is under Andre Bennett Attacking Edge. That's probably the best way. And I post a lot of detailed information on there about how players can improve, my coaching journey. So there's plenty of stuff to learn from there. So that's probably the best platform to use.
See, And you respond to people?
Yeah.
Just making sure they're not confusing.
Now I do, but in 10 years it might be a difference.
Yeah. So now's the best time. Now is the best time to get to you. No, that's really good, man. So I kind of I don't wanna go too much into anymore because I think there's so much we could actually talk about, and I don't want to take away anything. I feel like we just touched the surface of where Andre Bennett's going, what's he gonna be doing. So I want to save some for going forward, but I think you have shared some really, really inspiring gems, and hopefully it helps anyone who's been watching, and hopefully it inspires future coaches, players already playing, coaches already coaching. Hopefully it does do that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. before obviously we end and before you go, I got a quick fire question. This is what's up for breakfast. That's what the show's called. So I want to know what breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Breakfast.
Why?
It starts my day right.
Yeah. So we say without breakfast, it's a.
No, not necessarily. I used to train without breakfast,
Mm.
and then eat as a recovery meal, a big meal after that, after training. But I just think if I do breakfast right, my day is gonna start right.
Yeah. Like we have a saying in it, and I say on this show, I say a good breakfast might not always mean a good finish, but it certainly does help.
Like that. It's mine now.
Yeah, and on that, we'll leave it there. So, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. I've been Coach Nathaniel, aka Mr. Escalate, and we have had
Andre Bennett.
Lovely, and yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Take it easy.